Welcome back to the Token Intelligence Show. And today, John, this is going to be a little bit meta. This is podcast inception because our podcast episode is going to be about
a podcast episode.
About a podcast episode
Yes.
on a separate podcast. So
Awesome.
You told me about this.
I did.
So what's the episode and how did you originally find it? I didn't even ask you.
I don't remember how I originally found it. So it's an episode interview of Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA.
Yep.
Longest standing tech CEO.
Longest standing tech CEO.
20-something years?
30
years? 30 full years. Yeah.
If I remember correctly from the episode.
I think you're right. 30 years.
Which is incredible.
It is, and I could just be out of touch here, but I don't remember seeing. I think part of what piqued my interest is I don't feel like I've seen a lot of interviews with him until more recently.
Okay.
I could just be out of touch, though. I don't know.
You could.
Have
be
you?
out of touch.
Is he somebody you've seen like on YouTube or other places like interviews or clips on a regular basis until like
but
couple years?
I'm more sheltered even than you when it comes to the latest tech news.
Yeah.
I have a narrower window
That's
than people
funny.
probably think. But
Yeah.
the things that come to mind are quotes. You know, what he says carries a lot of weight, especially, I mean, it really has for a long time, but particularly in the age of AI, he is a major, I was going to say voice, but that's not strong enough. I mean, the strategic decisions that they make have a really big impact industry-wide because there are a lot of downstream effects.
Well, and it seems, and the thing that I like and that I look for in these things are how do the competitors speak about? Like somebody he's competing with, his frenemies, like how do they speak about him? And pretty highly from everything I've seen as far as news coverage.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't know the full behind the scenes, but the people that are his kind of in his frenemy territory seem to speak pretty highly of him.
Well, we were talking with a local guy just earlier this week, which we should probably do an episode on this, but we got him set up on OpenClaw.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's an older guy. He's not retired, but has been very successful in real estate. So has a very, very large real estate company.
Right.
And it was so fun to talk to him. And Jensen Huang came up.
Yep.
It was fun to talk to him because we just started talking about AI, and he's the most advanced person at his real estate firm using AI.
Yeah.
Which was shocking. And then
maybe in town outside of tech people.
Maybe in town outside of tech people. It was amazing.
It was cool.
And Jensen Huang came up because he talked about meeting Sam Altman.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was I was like, okay, like
right.
You know, he met Sam Altman, you know, out on the West Coast at some event, you know, which is like, wow, that's really crazy. And then Jensen Huang came up and he had really good things to say about Jensen Huang. He didn't say that he's met Jensen Huang.
Right.
But if he is, you know, in circles where he's interacting with Sam Altman, my guess would be that he probably has decent...
Those people that know him.
He probably has better insight than you and I. So, but we're going to disregard that and just armchair quarterback our take from a podcast.
Yeah, but one other like tidbit there, like I really enjoy meeting people in real estate because especially, I mean, he's been doing it for, I don't know, probably maybe 40 years at this point. Part of that job is getting a good sense for people.
Yes.
Like, that'd be any sales job, but especially real estate. It's very, very, very heavy relational.
Yep.
And I tend to respect those people's opinions.
Totally.
For hot takes on people just because they have so many reps.
There's so many reps and they're a really good read. Okay, so how did you originally find the episode?
Yeah. It piqued my interest. I just saw it on Spotify or YouTube, I think. A Joe Rogan episode. And piqued my interest because I was like, oh, I know of this guy. I've heard him quoted, but I've never heard a long form interview with him, of Jensen Huang. And then NVIDIA has been a big deal with chips. They miraculously hit two waves perfectly. They hit crypto, which helped them a ton because they're so they manufacture. I'm trying to frame this in a good everyday language. GPU, but graphics cards would be like the best way to describe it.
Yep.
They got started in video gaming, which we'll talk about.
That was the first wave, really. So there was sort of the gaming graphics, video world where people were using PCs to create video, play games, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And NVIDIA was the only, it was the go-to for building, high-power computers that were doing graphics.
Yeah, but over the last 10 or 15 years, they perfectly hit two waves. One was crypto.
Mm-hmm.
So their hardware you would use to mine Bitcoin, for example.
Yep.
And then like as that kind of went down, they rode the AI wave up to an even higher height of training AI models. So the time in that, like nobody could have planned that.
Incredible.
So it's been really good, obviously really good for their company. Anyways, but what I want to talk about is like, let's trace some of the story there. Because I think there's some really interesting tidbits that he shares on the show about NVIDIA getting started, how they almost failed a couple of times, and then into some of the AI stuff. So I don't know, do you remember at the beginning where they're talking about that story they shared about the very like genesis of the company and where they like almost failed?
Yes. And it's great that you said genesis because it was
that's true,
because
that was
the
not even
story.
intentional.
This is amazing actually, and I think this is one of my biggest takeaways from the episode. But I will briefly retell the story, and you can keep me honest if I miss any of the details. But they were building a processing unit for the company Sega.
Yes.
And man, do you remember the Sega Genesis when it came out?
Of course,
right?
Mortal Kombat and Sonic.
Yeah,
Sonic
Sonic
was
was the big one. And which is funny because my kids, there's Sonic movies that have come out in the past couple of years.
Right.
And so I played that on a Sega. And they're like, what? Wait, what? You knew about this? Anyways, Sega was a huge customer. They signed a huge contract with them. And they realized that they had made the wrong bet on, they made the wrong bet on the way that they were solving the problem in some function of the chip.
When he walked through, I think there were 3 components. So it's a very competitive like industry at that time with graphics. I think their original idea was, hey, we want to take the like high level ideas. We want to take these games from the game consoles and have you be able to use a PC to play them.
Yes.
Like that was a high level concept.
Yes. Yep.
I think there were 3 different bets. I don't know enough about the technology to go into them, but he's like, we took 3 different bets, but all 3 were like kind of contrarian, and we got all 3 of them wrong. So they were basically, dead last is like the right thing to do.
Yes.
And then they had this major contract they had to deliver on with Sega.
With Sega. And it was, a couple of things stick out. Well, I'll finish the story and then we can talk about how incredible this is. He realizes this is not going to work. We made the wrong decision here.
Yes.
We made the wrong decision strategically and technically.
Right.
And he flies to Japan, meets with, they have, a pretty high burn rate and they're running out of money. He flies to Japan, goes and meets with the CEO of Sega, and he just tells him directly, we cannot deliver what we are contractually obligated to deliver because we made the wrong choices. But my company is going to die unless you give me $5 million. Which I don't know if that was the contract value, but I think it was somehow related to the contract value. But, so I can't deliver it, but I still need you to pay
the rest
me.
of the contract.
Or my company's going to die. And, I think he said, I think we know what to do now to make it work.
Right.
And he said, the guy said, I'll think about it.
Right.
Which is an outlandish ask. I mean...
Well, he did say he went into detail about why they thought it would work, why it didn't work, what their plan,
Yeah, he was very straightforward. He said we made bad choices, right? But we believe that we know how to do it now.
Right.
And the guy took a couple days to think about it, which I keep thinking about him in a hotel room in Japan. The technology back then for remote communication. I mean, what year would that have been? You're still paying a lot of
90s.
money to communicate internationally like that.
I think late 90s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I just think about him sitting in a hotel room. Anyways, the guy comes back and he's like, sure. And so they invested $5 million in the company, and it would have died if that didn't happen. Right. And a couple of things here that are really astounding to me. One is that he went through the trouble of personally visiting the CEO of Sega, and just coming clean and not trying to sugarcoat it, at least from the way that he tells the story, which, if you listen to the episode, I believe him.
Yeah.
Just saying, I am responsible for these bad decisions. We can't deliver this. And then, having the audacity to say, I still want you to pay me.
Right.
Is incredible. But catching that early and just calling it out, I think is really significant.
Well, and he said this as a throwaway line, which is so true, and I think is even more true today than it would have been in 1998. He's like, I got that money because the guy liked me.
Yes.
And that likability thing, like we were talking about this a few minutes ago we were talking about content, promoting things. The likability thing is like about, like, you've got some brand, like, you can have a brand that's likable and people that are likable, some combination thereof. At least if you're in tech, like, that's what you have as your differentiator.
Yeah.
Unless there's some edges where I think you can differentiate still with tech, but for most people, it's going to be that.
Yeah. I remember early in my tech, early in my career in tech, and we'll just say sort of like Silicon Valley tech.
Yep.
Where it was, sort of true B2B enterprise tech sales, my first exposure to that. And, which is kind of crazy, if you've never sort of experienced it, right? And what's crazy about it is just the way that software margins work and the psychology behind salespeople, motivation, incentives. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah, right? Especially in enterprise B2B deals.
Yeah, and it can be extremely lucrative, like mind-bogglingly lucrative. And I remember someone telling me, like a seasoned sales leader saying, I mean, people like to buy from people that they like, And so he's like, and he's like, everyone likes to talk about the product, which, certainly does play a role. But he's like, really, at the end of the day, if you have two products that are on an even playing field as far as feature parity, functionality, et cetera, they will just buy from the person that they like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true. And I think we're going to continue down that road where, say you're going to buy a CRM, like in 2026. It's like, okay, like if you're at a certain size, like you probably still just buy Salesforce, but maybe you're more of a mid-market company and you're like, I don't know, like which vibe do I like better? Like I just need a CRM.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. In fact, I don't know if I've told very many people this story, but the reason that story was really meaningful to me is that I have called investors to give money back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was, I really identified with, it was definitely not at the scale, and I didn't fly to Japan.
It wasn't $5 million.
But no, it was a seed round, but it was meaningful.
Yeah,
it was $750,000.
Yeah.
Of institutional capital. And we had built a startup in the ad tech space, which, like Jensen, was, that was a bad strategic decision because ad tech is the worst.
Yeah.
But it was a very interesting idea, and we were, early in the days of the company, we had a pilot running with like Motley Fool. Nice. And so it was like, this is cool. Like there's an actual need here.
Right.
And we'll do an episode and I can tell the whole story about the product, which is really interesting. But shortly after we started the pilot with Motley Fool, COVID hit. And if you remember, COVID became one of the biggest boons in digital advertising, in the last several decades.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that at the beginning. In the
Right.
first 6 months, everyone was scared. Budgets got pulled back, and people went back to just doing what they knew would work because there was a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yep.
And there was a lot of carnage. I mean, local businesses are closing, and it was a very difficult time for a lot of businesses, right? And so during that winter, it basically killed the startup, because it's like, okay, no one's doing anything experimental right now with advertising, right? And so I remember, we let people go literally because of that, because it was like, okay, well, I mean, we were either going to have successful pilots and go raise additional capital, or figure something out. But we had several engineers who were, cranking. And I remember walking into the office one day and saying, this isn't going to work.
Right.
Like the survival likelihood is so low. And so I called the main, I called the lead investor and I said, hey, this isn't going to work. Would you like your money back?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's different than what Jensen did, but like a similar thing where it's like, this is a problem. Yeah.
Well, and you could have like lied to yourself and be like, well, like, let's give it a few more months. Let's, and, but yeah. That is cool. I had not heard that story.
Yeah, it was wild.
So do you remember Jensen's second story where they almost died again?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to try to recount this because it's a long episode, so I listened to it in different contexts. Yeah. And so this one I was at the gym, I think, doing like,
There you go. There's a good memory palace hack for you.
Yes,
like, I was at the gym.
I was at the gym. No, seriously, I was doing deadlifts or something.
Okay, perfect.
Anyways, they needed to get a chip to market.
Yep.
And I think they had a customer for it.
Yes.
Or they had orders for it, but
they had a big PO. That was part of it.
They had a big PO, but in order to deliver it on time, they couldn't go through a full testing cycle.
Correct. Yep.
And so they figured he knew that someone was working on an emulator that would essentially emulate the chip and test it without actually testing the hardware.
Yep.
And he called the company, and the company said, we just went out of business. Like, we're not a company anymore.
Right.
He's like, but I really need one of your emulators. And they were like, well, just buy one from us. But like, we're not in business,
Right. I think they had one. I think they had like one
They
left.
had one left in inventory. And so they were like, you can buy it. So they buy the emulator. No one had ever used an emulator. No one had ever sent a chip to a foundry without actually testing it first.
Yep.
And no one had really used an emulator the way that they were doing it. And so they buy this emulator with a huge amount of money. I mean, I think it wasn't cheap.
It was like over $1 million.
Over $1 million.
They had like $2 million in the bank. It was something.
It was crazy. It was like it was double-digit percentage of their capital left,
Correct.
which was a lot, right? And so it was like, this is either going to work or we're going to die.
Right.
And he calls the foundry up. They'd run the test. It's successful.
Right.
They call the foundry, and he says, just go straight to production. And he's like, no testing, no anything. And the guy's like, that is insane.
Right.
Like, absolute. Like, no one's ever done this before. And he's like, how? Like, why are you doing this? He's like, because I know it's going to work.
Right.
But no one had ever done an emulator before.
Yeah.
And that's how it's done now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
They didn't plan to they just needed to meet the PO order. Which is crazy. How did I do? Was that?
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to podcast in the gym more often.
Yeah, maybe so. But, and it is funny, like, I mean, both those are really great stories, but there's actually a book. I don't know if you've ever read it before. It's a guy, Ed Catmull, who was at Pixar. And he tells a story in the book, Creativity Inc. I think
you've told me about this. You've told me about this. Yeah.
So great book. And I find that there's a number of people that I feel like are the most honest with themselves. Because anytime you sit down and interview with somebody that's been really successful, there's two ways you can go. One, like revisionist history about how everything lined up and how you impacted it, and like how things were so great because of what you did.
Yep.
Right? Like, that's one version of the story.
Mm-hmm.
The other version of the story, which I think is more accurate, is all of the things that happened and how little control you had. Right?
Yep.
And I feel like Jensen, at least from the stories, was more online with that.
Yep.
And Ed Catmull tells the story in Creativity Inc. about, I believe it's Toy Story 2.
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2, I can't remember. But
Yep.
it is one of the like make or break movies for Pixar.
Yep.
When they're like new and like, if we don't, like, we're done if this one isn't, successful.
Mm-hmm.
So they're working on final cuts of this thing. And for whatever reason, they lose like all of the footage. Like all of the work is like gone. Like all of the work is gone. Some kind of server crashes. No, it wasn't that. It was a human error. Somebody RMRF'd like all of the files. That's like a Linux command to like basically delete all the files.
Yeah.
And he's like, we were done. Like we were not going to hit the production deadlines. We're going to be out of capital. Like we were done. And there was a lady on the team who was on maternity leave and happened to have a full backup of everything to be able to work from home.
No.
And that is how they got the movie footage back and like hit the deadline.
No.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
My gosh. Okay. Let's think about this for a second. The feeling in the person's gut who RMRF'd.
Right.
And it's one of those things where they probably initially were like, oh, wait, maybe I didn't mean to do that. And then they realize, I mean, can you imagine?
And this is pre-AI. Like that happens all the time with AI.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, who knows like why that happened or how it happened.
Right. And the circumstances, things happen. I don't know.
Right.
Things happen
Things
or
happen.
whatever. But like RMRFing in a directory that includes everything is pretty wild. And then, okay, so I feel for that person.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Right.
Yeah, because there's at least a window of time where they're like, I just sunk the whole company, legitimately.
Yeah. I mean, it ends up to be like a great, like the best story where it's like, I deleted Toy Story and almost killed Pixar.
But from both of these, what I think is a helpful perspective and takeaway from like all three of those stories is that like I'm not actually in control of my
100%.
life, my company,
Yep. Okay, I thought about this. So I talked with one of our mutual friends, who we should have on the show sometime. But he's a CRO at a like mid-market SaaS company.
Yeah.
And they have, a timeline for they're private equity owned, and so they have a timeline for exiting the company.
Sure.
And I was chatting with him about, we try to catch up. We have like the perfect lineup of like, 20 minutes to talk after we drop our kids off at the same time on Tuesday mornings.
Okay, great.
And so, I don't always pick up. He doesn't always pick up, if we have other calls, but like,
so there's like
probably every,
occasional magic windows.
50% of the time it works, and it's,
Right.
it's the best,
Sure.
And so anyways, I was just asking him about, how are you looking on the timeline to exit?
Yeah, for that. Yeah.
And, suitors and all that sort of stuff. And his response was so wise. He's a very wise man, generally. But his response is so wise. He said, the only thing that we can keep doing is building a great business, because if there's anything I've learned, it's a timing and sort of market dynamics thing that it is impossible to put together. Right. And so he talked about a company previously that he sold to the Active Network, which is a big like sports registration, sporting event. So he sold a company to Active, and I can't remember the exact reason, but Active was struggling to reach a certain particular segment of the market.
Right.
And instead of trying to build that muscle themselves, they decided to go look for companies to buy.
Yeah.
And the venture team had a 3-month window and a limited budget, and they ended up buying 2 companies.
Yeah.
And that was the window, right? And you never could have predicted that timing. It was a very short window. It was a very specific market segment, and he was just like, how could I have planned for that? Right? Like it's impossible.
Right.
Impossible. I actually feel the same way about the Iron Yard. We sold it to a big publicly education.
We talked about this the other day, where you're saying, like, basically, there's kind of a lot of combination of like code school, arc of popularity, like political environment.
Yep.
And it was.
Yeah. I mean, you're coming off of the 2008 recession. So you're several years after that, right? And so that was a time where career mobility was limited, or, more limited than it had been in the past.
Right.
Software, it's in the early 2010s. And so software is starting to just go, crazier than it ever has. Yeah. And so demand for engineering talent is off the charts.
Yeah.
But traditional computer science degrees are, teaching, they're not teaching the modern frameworks, right? Everyone's building in Rails. They're building in, with React. They're building sort of modern web application stuff, right? And like universities weren't teaching that. So these CS grads come out, and Facebook's like, well, I mean, we need React engineers and we need like 1,000, whatever, right? And so the market timing was really good from that standpoint, but the administration at that time had really tightened down restrictions on for-profit education.
Yeah, right.
And and that meant that this big publicly traded education conglomerate, the regulatory environment completely changed for them, and it was way harder for them to make money.
Right.
So they started going out and looking for schools that were figuring out how to operate in the environment, of which we were one.
Right.
And so it's like, it was crazy. Just all those factors combined.
All right. One more Jensen point to wrap on.
Yes.
The end. So he talks about his growing up and stuff in the end.
Yes.
At the episode. Oneida Baptist Institute.
Yes, I believe that's correct. In Kentucky.
In Kentucky. He spent like a year or two there when he first came to America. And that was, you can share some of your memory of the conversation, but that was like really remarkable. But yeah, let's start. You can start because we were talking about this. Start with him kind of coming over in the story, like, him coming over from
because
he's Chinese, but I think he came over.
He's
from Thailand,
Chinese, but
maybe.
his dad was doing a big project in Taiwan.
Oh, that's right.
And I think it was some sort of refinery. Yeah. So his dad was an engineer. He didn't go into detail about this, but his parents were very poor. And so I don't know if it was just it was the government was had him work on building an oil refinery. But the political environment was very tumultuous then, as it is today.
Right.
And his parents didn't want the kids to, they wanted to get them out of that.
Yeah, they felt like environment and
it wasn't
safety.
safe. So they sent him to an uncle that they'd never met in Washington.
Yes, the kids had never met.
Yep, 9 and 12, or somewhere around there, 9 and 11.
Yep.
And the uncle was tasked with finding a school that his parents could afford, which mean it needed to be extremely, cost effective, and that would take these foreign kids. Right? I mean, they spoke English, but they weren't perfectly proficient at it because they were Chinese natives, right?
Yeah.
And so the school that he found was Oneida Baptist Institute in Kentucky. I want to say it's Clark County, Kentucky. Yeah. Which he said was the poorest county when he went to school there, and is still the poorest.
Like in the United States.
In the United States. Yeah. And he gets into his room. His roommate's 17. He's 9.
Yep.
His roommate smokes.
Right.
Which he was, he's like, everyone smoked.
Right.
And he was covered with bandages because he'd been in a knife fight.
I remember that. Yeah.
Like bleeding.
Yeah.
He's like walks into his room and there's this guy who's like bleeding.
When he's in the dorm for the older kids, but like walks across the river, the street, or whatever.
Right. He walks a mile to go to
the junior high.
Yes.
But that one didn't have a dorm, so he was in the dorm with the older kids. Was part of the thing.
Yep.
But
incredible.
And he doesn't really go into detail on this too much, but I really wonder how that really shaped his life experience from a living in that environment, interacting with people he never would have interacted with, obviously. And even the I don't know anything about that school, but even the at least somewhat biblical perspective that I assume, part of that. I know nothing about the school.
The name Oneida Baptist Institute, there's no way there wasn't chapel.
Yeah, there had to be.
He definitely got exposure to that.
Yeah, but
I do wonder, I do wonder
know.
his, religious,
Yeah.
I wonder if he is.
I Googled it, and it's
really
unclear, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Makes sense, yeah.
It's not, especially if he hasn't done like a ton of interviews and stuff.
Right. But it must have been so formative, the whole experience on a bunch of different levels.
I will tell you one thing from early in the episode that stuck out to me, and I didn't make the connection explicitly like you did. But so early in the episode, Joe Rogan is really pushing Jensen on, like, people are afraid of AI.
Yes.
People are scared.
Right.
People are scared because of like attacks and war.
Yeah. Right.
People are scared because of job displacement. And I mean, he kind of pushes to the point where Jensen, it's not like a confrontational interaction.
Right.
But the way that Jensen answers is highly confident, but also empathetic.
Yeah.
Where he he never gives you the impression that being scared is like dumb. That's like, why would you be scared? This is, it's like, I know a lot about AI, and that's silly. Don't be scared, right? Like, you're being, that's unfounded fear or whatever. It was just very he's like, that's sure. Like, I understand that, but here's why I believe that, here's why I'm not worried or whatever.
Right. Well, and I almost missed the best part of the whole interview. And I think you'll remember it once I say it. When I think Joe asked him, like, kind of, what is your motivation? Like, why do you do, like, what do you do? Like that thing. I don't know if you remember his answer for this, but his answer was so good. He basically was like, Joe, I'm literally just trying to stay alive. Like, I work all the time, and I do not have any like grand like whatever plans or whatever. I'm just trying to survive, and
not get fired,
and not and not get
he's
fired.
Like, I don't want to get fired, and I don't want to fail.
Right? Yeah, I don't want to fail. That was the perfect. The exactly what he said. It was such. And it's just the way you communicate it too. Is like, that is one of the most honest answers that I've ever heard from a CEO.
That was unbelievable.
Like, unbelievably honest.
Yeah.
And I feel how the majority of CEOs actually feel that would be true, or should be true.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's probably not. But
right. No, it was. You just get the sense that he's so humble,
right?
Because first of all, he talks about cratering the stock price from 12 billion to 4 billion by making a bet that ended up making a lot of the early AI training possible because they built this chip. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. But he was like, it was so expensive to build, twice as expensive as anything else.
Right.
And so he made the decision to do it anyways, which cratered the stock price. I mean, you're talking about, over 60% of the company value evaporating. And Joe Rogan asked him, like, well, what's it worth now? And he said, it's worth a lot more. Yeah. And Joe asked him like two more times, I think. And he won't say the number.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that is just so humble. And I appreciated so much that there wasn't the snake oil management strategy. Here are like the three major like strategies I've learned as an executive leader.
I wrote down pull quotes from this.
Oh,
are you ready?
Perfect.
Okay. So the prompt was from Joe about why are around the success thing.
Yeah.
He says, I have a greater drive from not wanting to fail than the drive of wanting to succeed.
Yes. Yeah.
The second one was the fear of failure drives me more than greed or whatever else. And he says, I'm not ambitious. I just want to stay alive. Yes. And then he does give two pieces of advice. Like, I don't know if you remember what they are. But the two pieces of advice are, one, don't get fired.
That's right. That was advice. That's right. Yeah.
But his second one was don't get bored.
Yeah.
Maintain that enthusiasm. And he said, And the enthusiasm is going to come from some combination of fear and frustration.
Yep.
And those were like the pull quotes, which I thought were so good.
So good.
And they're simple and like extremely honest.
Yeah.
And yeah. So either he is the absolute best gaslighter I've ever met in my entire life, or it's all real. And I like to think it's real.
I like to think it's real too. And I would say this on such a smaller scale. I mean, it's silly for us to compare our experience with Jensen Huang's experience.
For sure.
But I've been an executive. You've been an executive. I've been a founder. You've been a founder. And what he said is so true around, if you get your ego out of the way, you realize that success is not guaranteed, no matter how much work you put in, no matter the strategies that you apply, right? Those are just all things that can, that hopefully make it more possible, right? But he just says that so plainly. And I think what I would translate that into, which he didn't use these words to describe himself, and he wouldn't, but is that he just doesn't take that stuff for granted, He seems like the type of guy who's like, this thing's almost died like multiple times, and he'd never let himself get to the point where he thought, but I'm the one who it wasn't this conceited, like I saved the company multiple times. It was just like, I'm so thankful, that I still get to do this.
Yeah. Well, and I think you and I would frame it as in like, God is actually in control of my life.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know what he thinks, but that is the reality here. And obviously my effort matters and my abilities matter and things like that too. But that is the framing. And I think there's a lot of people that have maybe if they don't believe in God, but have this parallel view that overlaps some of just being deeply aware of what they maybe would ascribe to chance in their life. Like that is the only other thing that at least creates some artificial humility in people. Yeah. Yeah. And then the third viewpoint being that like, I did it.
Yes. Yep.
And
yeah. And I think that I think that it's really easy to mix the second two of those.
Oh, everybody has a mix of some of the three, even if you like
yes, for sure. Yeah. Everyone has a mix of some of the three. Yeah. But one thing, this came up recently. It was over the holidays, and I was just a couple months into my job at Vercel, and one of my brother-in-laws said, they were asking me, like, what are you working on? And, it's sort of like, this is the heart of tech in Silicon Valley, and et cetera. Yeah. And he asked a really interesting question. He's like, 10 years ago, would you sort of have imagined, or like, were you aspiring to do the types of things that you do today? It was just a really interesting, it was a good question, to sort of force some self-reflection. Yeah. And it really made me step back and think about my career path. And I said, I don't know if I really knew, I didn't have like major career aspirations. Right. I didn't even have this dream of starting my own business. Right. Much less, selling a business or, starting multiple businesses. And in fact, I would have told you a year ago that if I, going to work for a company just as an individual contributor, I would have been like, that does absolutely not sound like, it doesn't sound like where my trajectory would take me based on, all of my experience or whatever. Right. But I said, I think it would be easy for me to go back and, like you said, do revisionist history and sort of talk about how like I leveraged these experiences into the next one and like, whatever. Right. And in reality, all of the major career moves I've had have been surprising, and God has just opened doors that, open even at times that are really not opportune and in ways that seem very counterintuitive. And in fact, I remember even with this latest one coming to Vercel, I talked with you about this.
You were seriously considering a different
yeah,
thing.
I was going to start a company.
Almost did something else.
Yeah. And I mean, I did. I like had literally like, you know, had
yeah,
a
you were
legal
on the,
entity.
yeah, sure.
And it was surprising, you know, to me, but, you know, my wife and I prayed about it and just had peace about it. And that's really how all of them have transpired. Right. And so I think that it is that illusion of control. And I think Jensen Huang, you know, I don't think that he is blinded by the illusion of control, which is really cool.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I mean, I've very much had a similar experience of like, all right, I'm gonna do something else, like want to do something else, and it's like, what, like what do I even do?
Right. When you left your CTO
job. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just felt a lot of blessing and like from God and from people around me. They were just so great.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, there you go. That's the episode.
Jensen Huang, meta episode about another episode.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that again.
Yeah.
But it's so good that we had to. So please go listen to it.
Listen to the real episode.
Yeah, listen to the real episode. All right, we'll catch you on the next one.